I am Matt Wilhelmi, and I'm the owner of Strategic Voyages Business Consultants. I'm also the author of Taboo Business Questions, What's Haunting Every Entrepreneur's Growth. And today I am very lucky and blessed to be joined by my friend Lou Costabile. Lou is a communications expert, instructor, coach, all things communication. He's also a Dale Carnegie Award winner in sales. He runs a YouTube channel with millions of monthly views. And today we are going to be talking about the DISC profile, because Lou is an expert instructor for organizations facing communication problems. And like I said, Lou, thanks so much for joining us. How are you today?
Matt, it's my pleasure. I'm excited to be with you.
Yeah. So Lou, you and I have known each other for a long time. And I feel like I got to kind of see a lot of this growth. You know, maybe it's been 10 years or 15 years, and you've definitely, kind of grown in your profession and your communication skills. And now you've been able to kind of find these organizational issues with communication and helped leaders kind of navigate through that. What kind of was the light bulb moment for you when you realized that this is something that a lot of organizations really need help with?
Well, I'll start with the light bulb moment. Was I started, I won't go too far back, but I started as an only child. And when you're an only child, you kind of have two choices. You can be a lonely child or an only child. And I realized that my communication was a thing that was bringing people together, and we were having a lot of fun. And the really key to the success is it's not talking about myself, it's talking about them. And when I kept them as the topic, they always found me more fascinating. So as long as you understand that, you mentioned the social media, and I've got a presence on YouTube. I'm not so popular that they're calling it LouTube. They're calling it YouTube. So I have to continue to press information that is interesting to the viewer rather than myself.
Well, Dale Carnegie, you might have borrowed that from him. He says that, to be interesting, you need to be interested. And that's one of the things I've always admired about you. You know, you mentioned your YouTube channel success with the millions of views. I kind of skipped over this small, milestone in your career, 7th degree black belt in Taekwondo.
In mixed martial arts, I just want to be clear. Taekwondo is just a piece of the puzzle, but
don't break my wrist, teaching me how to talk to you about martial arts. So yeah, you've got all this impressive, business acumen and discipline and dedication. So now you've kind of pivoted and figured out that there's these communication issues that organizations need to solve. And I want to bring our viewers and our listeners into a very specific issue that you and I were talking about, where you were able to kind of step into this organization, teach them some communication skills, and really kind of help their leadership team grow in a very specific way. And so that's kind of the case study we'll be talking about today. Lou, one of the things that I love about you is your dedication to intentionality. And when you are speaking to somebody and you're working with an organization, you really kind of go deep with them. You understand what they're dealing with. You use all of your different communication skills. And I think people really resonate with that. And so it's no surprise to me that this CFO that you were working with, wanted to reach out to you and get some help with their new IT leader. Can you help me understand a little bit more about maybe that first couple of conversations? What was it that really, in your mind, allowed you to say, wow, I get what their communication issues are. It's a symptom you see all the time. Kind of what did that look like?
Okay, so I've gone from childhood. I'm now going into business. One of the things too, and I'll just talk about this from childhood, that was really helpful was my dad started teaching me chess at the age of 6, and he wouldn't allow me to win until I was about 8.5. So I had to really start to look at moves ahead. And once you understand looking at moves ahead, and then going back to, the only way I could kind of get friends was to be interested in them. You're now moving into business. Well, in business, one of my first, I was in communications pretty much my entire life. I had a bachelor's degree in communications and liberal arts school. And the first thing I did at college was I started to get as a disc jockey. Now, this is all going to tie in a minute. And to be a disc jockey, the first thing I did was I started to contact the head of the cheerleading staff. Will you come in and tell me about your cheerleading? The head of the wrestling team. So I never made it about me. I always made it about them. But my key to success was when I made it about the wrestling team, guess who was listening? The entire wrestling team. When I made it to cheerleaders, all the cheerleaders would listen in. So I was hitting certain pockets, and before you knew it, I had hit all the popular groups: basketball, baseball. You're the captain of the baseball team. Tell me what that means. How did that happen? Then they would all listen in, and they'd have their families listen in. So I went from a radio station to college that wasn't getting almost anybody to listen, because everybody in the college was playing music they wanted to hear. And I was doing interviews of everybody at the college to tell them information there. So again, the real key in Dale Carnegie, I think if I could sum up his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, it's really the golden rule: treat others the way you want to be treated. So if we understand, I see you looking back, looking for your book there.
I'm just trying to figure out if I have that one ready to go, but I know that that's one of your favorite books, and I appreciate you recommending it such a long time ago. It was really, really powerful, in my early 20s to kind of read that book.
Well, I'll tell you, I met you in your early 20s, and I might have even told you to read that book, because I think I highlighted it for you and gave you that before you even started your college career. And you were quite adamant about not getting into college. And I said, well, the professionalism that you already have, you need to really work on your education. And because of that, you're like a champion for me, because you're not only working on your bachelor's, which you completed, but you're also working on your master's, et cetera, and completed that. So, I mean, our communication skills goes back to, when I first saw you. First, you have to see the promise. And I saw the promise in you. And I said, but you just had a few holes in your Swiss cheese, and I filled those in. But you had to take the initiative to keep going. And you did. And you're doing that right now, and you're helping businesses as well. So I don't take all the credit for that, but I know that I coached you. So people who listen to the podcast will know that, it's not about me, it's about us. And if you're a giver naturally, you always end up getting more back. I didn't know literally years and years ago, when I was helping you with that we would be sitting on this talking about communication styles years and years later, that we would be helping more people around the globe. But that's what we're doing. So now, going back to one of my first positions, I was a recruiter. And I was trained in something called targeted selection. So I was pretty good at people's personalities to begin with. And now they were giving me courses to make me even stronger. As I like to say, I was almost like Lou on steroids, because they were teaching me that how to ask a question and get a response, and then give somebody a grade. So, and I'll use just one question as an example. Tell me how you learned X. And the person who knows little about it will say, I just did it. Okay, that's a really low answer. If they say, well, I went to a course. Okay, anything more? Well, I studied the course. Oh, I kind of figured that. I passed the course. Okay, that's still a relatively low answer. All right, and the 4 levels of learning are: you don't even know that you don't know. Now you know you don't know. You're competent. You're master virtuoso. So I'm going up the ladder. So a competent person would say something like this: I first went and researched, went on the internet. I got the course syllabus, and I started to read it before the class. Now I read it before the class, and I knew the answers that the teacher was talking about, because I had some knowledge of it already. I passed the class with flying colors, and then I decided to be the teacher's aide to learn a little bit more. That's a really competent answer. Now, if you want master virtuoso, I then wrote a book about the topic. I then became a professor in the topic, and now I'm teaching classes on the topic. So those are the 4 levels of learning. And once I knew the differentiators between those, that's also how I could help. So that's the key, is just being a good communication coach. We all know how to communicate. I mean, everybody talks. It doesn't even matter what language you're talking about. It's, are you helping people get to the next level? And I like what you said about intentional. 2 people talked to me, and remember, when you're on YouTube, they'll tell you anything. So one of them told me, they said, you're pretty overbearing, was what they called me. Another person that same day called me carefrontational. And I liked number 2 better than number 1, because overbearing has a negative tone to it, means you're in my face. And carefrontational means that you care, but you will confront somebody and you will get right in there. So I think it is being intentional, and then caring enough for people. And if you do care for people, and I naturally cared for people because I knew that I would be very lonely if I didn't. So it was kind of naturally my way to succeed, or my lifeline to have more fun.
I love the term carefrontational. I just wrote that down. I'll have to come back to that and unpack that, because I feel like just in that one word, That's pretty accurate. So, we've kind of walked through your a little bit of your background. I'm sure we could spend a lot more time, hearing about a lot of your stories. And I don't mean to cut right to the chase, but I'm really interested in this story with the CFO. But I also realized that a lot of the stories you just kind of gave illustrate your, ability to not only teach and coach, but relate. And I think that's another big kind of part of communication where people don't necessarily want to hear what you have to say until they know how much you care. And that you have to kind of relate whatever the story might be, whatever the example might be, to somebody so that they get it. And that is kind of the premise of today, because I think a lot of people in business are, typically really good at their job, but maybe they're not so good at communicating about their job. Those are very different skills. And, not everybody's as, fluent in their speech as you are, Lou, or as confident when they speak. But I think that might be part of why you found this fantastic niche in teaching the D.I.S.C to different organizations and different leaders, because you work with a lot of really smart leaders. You work with CFOs, you work with CIOs, you talk to presidents of companies and founders and all these other, business people. And the one thing they have in common is they want to learn more about communication. And that's why you found this fantastic niche, because now you're able to speak their language, relate, build that foundational trust, and then pivot into understanding what maybe they're dealing with in their team dynamics or with their communication styles. And exactly what the issues are. There might be a leader who is more of a high D, more of the dominance trait, right? And they really just kind of want the baseline numbers. They're like, hey, I don't need the whole story. Don't give me a 30-minute presentation. Why wasn't this just a Slack message? Give me the bottom line. And they communicate so much differently than maybe somebody with an I or an S or a C. And so, when you're talking to these CFOs of companies, I would guess that a lot of them are very high on the D, but I'm curious, what are some of the symptoms? How do you know when somebody's dealing with a communication issue? Do they have a sign that says, I need help with my communication? Or how do you kind of intuitively pick up on some of those communication issues?
Well, I want to you said a couple of things that resonated with me. One of them, you said, Lou, you're very confident with your communication. Let me explain confidence first. Okay. And the easiest way I can do that is I can explain that. You mentioned that I'm a president of a martial art company. So that's a very structured organization for confidence. And what I mean by that, much like the military, they try to break you down and basically, stop your communication style and turn it into their communication style. So the first part is you have to be determined. If you quit the martial arts, you no longer have the benefit. To get to let's say the black belt, which is what people think you want to get to, even getting to the black belt won't go through these three things, but I'll talk about the three things because I like to give it, again, simple. Number one, you have to be determined. Everybody's going to get punched in the face. So if you're going to get punched in the face before you learn how to keep your guard up, when you get punched in the face, if your instructors explain to you, hey, you're going to get punched in the face, I just want to let you know, and you still keep coming, and then you get punched in the face and he goes, I told you that was going to happen. Yeah. And you go, how you doing with that? Yeah, I'm doing okay. And they don't come back anymore. They weren't doing okay. If they come back, then they keep coming back. So the first step, the foundational step in any business, any person who wants to be successful at anything, is you have to be determined. People who have doctor's degrees, the degree you're going after, you're determined to go after that. I had a guy who was very determined to not go after that, meaning Matt himself, who then decided, I am now going to be determined, and now loves calling me and saying, I'm going for even more, because you've gotten determined. And now the second piece, which is where you're at, is and you're probably the third as well, is you're successful. And the success in martial arts is you go from yellow belt to green belt to blue belt to brown belt until you get the black belt. Now, even when you're at the black belt, you might not be the number one top of the pyramid, so to speak. And the top of the pyramid is called confidence. You'll only get confidence after you've interviewed 3,000 people. You've talked to these CIOs, you've talked to these CFOs, you've listened to their challenges, and then you've had success providing them the right person or the right solution consistently, and they then pat you on the back, and then you start to, as a human being, believe it. Like, wow, they told me I was pretty good. You're kind of like a happy puppy with a pork chop. I must be pretty good. I must be pretty good. And finally that resonates in you, and you can see that your skill set is helping companies, and you're bringing a value. And bringing a value usually is 3 ways. You save them time, you save them money, or you are a hero. Back to your CFO question. So the CFO issue that they presented to me was, I have 2 people who aren't talking in the company. The sales manager is not talking well to the PR person. So those are the kind of issues that I will come up with solutions for and bring ideas to them. And factually, usually the solution works pretty well.
So when you say that they're having communication issues, what does that actually look like? Like, how do you know?
Yeah. So what it looks like is they hate each other. What it looks like is red faces. What it looks like is, I don't want to talk to that person because they don't understand me. I want to punch that person in the face. It literally can be not as aggressive as the last one, but sometimes as aggressive as the last one. Or this person walks in the room and you get up and walk out. Or I just can't stand that person. I mean, it's just, and it's not, so to speak, well, you don't know where they've come from and stuff like that. You just don't like them. I mean, it's just, that's how it is. Sometimes we just don't get along with everybody, or vice versa. You're so self-centered that you just want your agenda and anybody else's agenda who isn't your agenda, because your agenda must be the best. It's got to be my way or the highway, right? You're a dictator. So if you get everybody on board when you're a dictator, then everybody, rows the boat in the right way. But you get one person rowing in the wrong way, and you got to throw them overboard. So, the one constant is change. Okay. Everything changes. Matt has changed since I first met him tremendously, in a good way, right? There are some things that you've done that maybe I don't like. There are things that Lou does that you won't like. All right. Sometimes it's when I'm being overbearing, and other times it's carefrontational. You like the carefrontational Lou, but you hate the overbearing Lou. So we're all the same person, kind of. We're good at some things, not so good at other things. And I try to get people to work in what I call their God-given talent. And let me give you again, I don't want to get too much into solutions, but I'll use another example. So there was a director of operations who couldn't get her 4 order takers to take orders very well. And she said, I feel like I'm the mom in this family. I always have to scold them. That was a good example of, you're not communicating very well if you need to scold your employees. So again, I won't get into the solution right there, but that's an example of, this isn't working very well. I had a CFO who comes into my meeting as a guest and says, I think I just started this company and I think my president hates me. I said, why is that? He said, well, I walk in the morning and I say to him, hey, how was your weekend? And he goes, it was good. And he walks away. Or I'll start my thing saying, hey, I golfed. I know you like golf. I'll tell you about my golf time. He goes, yeah, good. And he walks away. I think he hates me. And it was that he found out, that same CFO, I gave him a few tips in the meeting, and he came back the next meeting with a check for annual dues. And he says, I'm joining. And I said, why are you joining? He says, because now you gave me a few tips, a few tricks, and it works. I'll use another one. This is going back to the martial arts of how somebody hates me. My mechanic for my car came up to me and says, you teach martial arts, don't you? I said, yeah. He goes, can you show me a move? He goes, I got a guy who walks up to me at the when I'm doing my mechanic. He grabs me from behind. He just lifts me up, and he walks around with me, and he thinks that's really funny. He goes, how do I get out of that? I said, is that a big problem for you? He goes, oh, it's a big problem for me. The guy picks me up, he makes me embarrassed, and he walks away. I said, is it a really big problem? He goes, yeah, I'm really, yeah, Lou, you heard me. I said, well, come to my class. I'll teach you in 1 month. You pay me for a month, and I'll show you that move. I don't give any of my martial art moves for free. And he came to the class, and I showed him one move, and he never came back again. But I showed him there's a value to these moves. So there's a value to communication, and the physical value of communication is, go back to what I said. If people know you, like you, and trust you, they will just naturally want to spend money with you. He heard I was a martial art instructor. He's working on my car. I didn't think there was a connection there. And I showed him one quick, easy move, and he came back. I physically did what the other guy did, and I said, okay, do that to me. And he did it to me, and I showed him a move that took him out of that fast. And I can't show it to you here, but because I'd have to stand up. But and he immediately, he goes, that was a good move. I said, yeah, just try that on him and see if it works. And it worked, and he never picked him up again. So
Lou, I think you've got a lot of interesting moves that you could probably teach. I want to save those for the last episode, because part of the structure I've tried to create is to kind of unpack a case study with my guests. And, you've presented a couple of really interesting issues. So I don't know if we're going to talk more about this director of operations who thinks she's the mom and has to scold her kids, or the CFO with the IT leader, but I'm really excited to get into some cautionary tales in our next episode. And the point of the next episode, is, a lot of these communication issues, I think people can relate to, but maybe they don't necessarily know how to solve it, which is the third episode, but they do know that if it doesn't get better, it kind of just keeps getting worse. And so I'd love to kind of unpack some really kind of frightening tales, some cautionary tales of what happens when the communication goes even more sideways and just doesn't get fixed. And so we'll do that in our next episode. Stay tuned.